Hi there and welcome back to Amplify, the Digital Marketing Entrepreneur Podcast. Happy New Year if you're listening as this comes out. Here's wishing you a great 2020. I'm Bob Gentle, and every week I'm joined by creators, consultants and practitioners who share what makes their business work. Whether you run your own business or you're just thinking of stepping out on your own for the first time, you're in the right place. If you're new to the show, then welcome along. Just take a second right now to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss new weekly episodes, and you can dig into some older ones when you finish this one. If it's your first time joining us for the show, then you'll probably want to join our Facebook group. Just visit the shortcut URL at amplifyme.fm/insiders and you'll be taken right there. There are a lot of things you can do to build your business online. Virtual summits, email marketing, live streaming, podcasting, write a book or a YouTube channel. And if you try and do it all, you'll be bad at it all. And this week, my guest is David Bain. And over the last 15 years, he's done it all and got good at it all. In this episode, he shares his journey and his perspective on how you can build skills in one platform, which logically leads to the next, and over time allows you to do much more, much better. So welcome along, and let's meet David. So this week on the podcast, my guest is David Bain, who his business is called Marketing Now. He's written a book called Marketing Now. David, do you want to maybe just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, and the kind of work you do?
Hey Bob, great to be on with you. Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you. So I guess I've been involved in digital marketing, stroke marketing for an awful long time now. I actually launched my first business online in the year 2000 and started making a fairly decent income about 2004, 2005 or so when Google AdSense came along. Got involved with digital marketing training and producing my own digital marketing seminars over a day about 2007 or so. And since then I've worked for a couple of agencies and in senior in-house roles as well. And I've also, as you alluded to, launched a book fairly recently called Marketing Now, based upon a series of podcasts that I've been doing over the last 5 years or so.
I think your podcast is really where I discovered you first. I think having sort of done my research for the show, you really were very early to the party in terms of digital marketing and also to podcasting. I think I'll be honest, very honest, when I benchmark how my podcast is doing in iTunes, I'm usually measuring it against where yours is. And yours has really done very well over the years.
It has over the years. I haven't been focusing too much on digital marketing radio recently. That podcast you're talking about there, I think for 3 or 4 years I was producing a podcast, at least an episode at least every week or so. It was September 2014, if I recall correctly, that I launched the show, and for a while I was ranking top 10, top 20 for digital marketing, and that was driving a decent number of downloads a month. Yeah,
you still are ranking top 20.
Okay,
it's really annoying.
The thing is, it's tough because I'm not intending to move forward with that brand. I'm intending to move forward with the Marketing Now brand, and I guess the key thought is, well, do I attempt to retain the existing RSS feed and just publish the new brands, the new episodes through that, or should I forward that and relaunch the show completely and have a different RSS feeds? I think there are pros and cons for that.
Yeah, I've heard other people have similar questions, and yeah, it's a tough one to answer, I think. So you mentioned a new brand, and that obviously brings me to the Marketing Now book. Book writing is something that it would be very difficult to claim is part of the digital marketing spectrum. But actually, when you look at the long-term value of content and content marketing, books are right there as the pinnacle, really. What was your rationale behind the book?
Well, it's funny because the way you're saying that books aren't really part of digital marketing, and I agree with that, but I've now come to the belief that marketing is digital marketing and digital marketing is marketing. And I've the first hard copy book that I published was back in early 2017, and that was called Digital Marketing in 2017. And Mark Asquith wrote the foreword to that, and Mark said, marketing is now digital marketing, or digital marketing is now marketing. I wasn't entirely sure that I completely agreed with him at the time, because I knew a lot of marketers who weren't savvy when it came to digital and what worked and MarTech and all those kind of things. But now I think the general belief and abilities of marketers have improved, and I think it certainly has come together, and it's important to think of marketing as everything together. And when you do that, then you realize actually content can be published on any platform, and it doesn't have to be consumed online and offline. And it reminds me, funnily enough, of the semantics of describing what I do, because back 10 years ago it was internet marketing, because everything was consumed digitally, or consumed online, sorry. And then, looking at Google trends, you could see the phrase digital marketing was rising. And it was actually about the time when the Kindle launched. And if you think about it, Kindle books are in digital form, but they can be consumed offline. So digital marketing is about the consumption of digital content, but it doesn't necessarily have to be online. So that's why the phrase digital marketing became more popular, I think, than internet marketing, as well as the fact that internet marketing was associated with get-rich-quick schemes online. But then you have marketing, and that embraces traditional marketing models and traditional great practice and other mediums tied together with digital marketing, including books, and that's got to be part of the digital mix now.
Yeah, and I think alongside that, in 2005, the internet was almost a parallel universe, whereas now the internet and the real world, they're pretty much one and the same. So marketing, it is pretty much digital marketing these days. There's very little in human experience that isn't digital now. Yeah,
if you promoted a business in any way in digital in 2005, you were more likely an IT geek sitting in the corner and not talking to anyone else in a marketing department.
Yeah, which was a very nice place for some people. So, again, looking at the book, one of the questions that I always have for people who've written books, particularly business books, in fact, only business books, it wouldn't work with sci-fi, but is what does your back end look like? Now, I'm not going to ask you to answer that question just now, because I think what the question is suggesting to me is why a book can be part of an online business, because it's where you reach an audience, but how you then convert that audience into value for your business is where the digital marketing, internet marketing, online business element comes in. So is there something that you've pre-mapped out? And if there is, how much of that did you plan in before you wrote the book? Sorry, it's a slightly long, awkward question. You'll know what I mean.
Going, yes. I don't think it's possible to plan everything out, but I think it's important to plan out calls to actions and a path that you would like readers to take after they finish some or all of your book. And the book's split up into 3 key sections. And at the end of each section, actually just to backtrack a little bit, we're recording this in January 2020, and then kind of back last month, December 2019, when I launched the book, I also recorded or live streamed 8 hours of content with 30 odd marketers who were part of making the book. And as part of the live stream, I recorded workshops looking into the individual sections of each book, giving specific examples with regards to what businesses should do to implement the knowledge contained in the book. So I've got these workshop recordings. So what I do at the end of each section of the book is I say, right, you've completed this section of the book. Now you need to go and watch the implementation workshop video. You can find that over at davidbain.com/marketingnow. Go to that. So people go to that page and they sign up for free to watch the workshop video. And then I've got people integrated into my digital mix. They're watching my videos and then they're subscribed to my email updates to receive more information from me.
And that all makes perfect sense. And it clearly you had done a little bit of forethought there, and you can never, I guess, predict what opportunities are going to crop up once your audience starts to engage, but it certainly makes sense to do some of that work in advance. How long has the book actually been out now?
Oh, it's just been out about a month or so. So it was launched on, it was the 10th of December.
And you really do have a star lineup in terms of contributors. Do you want to maybe just take us on a little journey through some of that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it probably depends on, I guess, what digital marketers really float your boat. I mean, I've got people who have created great MarTech businesses. I've got people like Larry Kim in there as well. Kind of Teresa Heath Waring. I've got Evan Carmichael, if you know him from YouTube. He's incredible on YouTube. Produces 3 great videos every single day on YouTube. Mark Trapp-Hagen's a wonderful content marketer as well. The thing is, it's so hard to actually shout out individual names because it's about the advice more than the names. Andrea Val, that's probably a name that a lot of people will know, but there's a total of 134 marketers in there, and I produce the content by getting people on a live stream and giving them all 3 minutes to share their number one actionable marketing tip, and then I took that content and made the book from there.
Now, this is somewhere I wanted to go, because when I looked at the list of contributors to your book, it's really impressive. And what I was curious to know is, obviously some guy off the street could not pull that off. How was that network built? And I'm going to answer that question myself. I'm going to take a bit of a gamble and say it would potentially have been through your podcasting journey.
Absolutely. That's it. So you just answer every question, Bob, and you know yourself. It's podcasting's a wonderful way of meeting people and forming great relationships. I actually published my first podcast in 2006, but I didn't get really serious about it until 2014, when I started Digital Marketing Radio. And for that particular show, I interviewed over 200 people. Over the last 5 years, I've probably interviewed about 500 different top marketers around the world. And if you have half-hour conversations with great people, and you get on well with them, then you want to keep in touch with them. And that's kind of what I thought to begin with. So after just over a year of doing Digital Marketing Radio, I was thinking, okay, what's a great way of keeping these relationships going? And I thought, okay, well, why not have an end-of-year recap show? So at the end of 2015, I had about 60, I think it was, of the guests that had been on the show so far all join me, all do a similar kind of thing, kind of give their number one. I think it was the number one thing that had happened in the year that they thought was most important, rather than an actual tip for the coming year. But it was really good. I actually did that on Blab, if you remember that. Blab was it was a wonderful platform for interacting on, and it was one of the first online platforms that you could really go to and interact on, and because it was one of the first, there was so much engagement there. You literally just went live and you had hundreds of people watching sometimes and lots of people interacting. It was a great platform, so recorded the content on there. But that was the beginning of my journey from going from podcasting to writing a book and keeping those relationships going that I made as a result of recording those podcast episodes.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I like the idea of bringing everyone together for a live stream, although the technical logistics of that just melt my brain.
Yes.
But there's almost certainly a way around it.
It is I was going to say horrendously challenging. It's kind of fun as well, but you've got to be prepared to be quite stressed about hopefully making sure the whole thing comes together okay, and you don't have any significant technical challenge that means that the whole thing falls down completely. One of the live streams that I put on, I just couldn't get the video to work properly, and I ended up having one of the guests jump in and host the first hour from me without even arranging it, actually, and that was a 4-hour live stream, so that was a bit stressful. But you like doing podcasting, like doing anything online, unless you push the boundaries a little bit and come through those kinds of lessons and experiences, then you're not improving as quickly as you might otherwise do.
So one of the things I'd like to speak about is, obviously you've written a book, you've got a lot of things going on that are your own, but you're also working for some other people as well, but not in the tradition. Well, you have some sort of traditional clients. I'm struggling to really articulate my
juggling
question.
different balls
yeah,
here.
you know where I want to go. What does your world look like, I guess, commercially?
I've got a few things going on. So as a result of doing hopefully a decent job of producing podcasts, hosting live webinars, I've had a couple of people approach me, including SEMrush. So SEMrush are a massive MarTech brand focusing primarily on SEO, and I've hosted over 50 kind of live streams and podcast episodes for them, producing those shows for them. I've also hosted massive virtual summits for Larry Kim, specifically his new brand Mobile Monkey. Larry Kim used to, he founded WordStream and sold that company, and then founded Mobile Monkey. And the virtual summits that he puts together are incredible as well, because you've got something like 3,000 or 4,000 people often on the live call that are interacting, and the live streams are for 8 or 9 hours long. So those are crazy events that I often host for Mobile Monkey. And as well as doing that, I do some podcast production for a couple of clients. For example, there's a barristers in London called 4 New Square. I host, I produce and kind of do everything for bringing together their shows.
And which of those keeps you busiest?
I guess it depends on the time of year. I mean, these massive virtual summits that I mentioned for Mobile Monkey, they only generally happen once every 2 months or so. That's at least a couple of days of solid work, of research, of preparation, of kind of guest preparation, and the whole day of hosting the event is very, very intense as well, because you've got to be online, on form, and kind of be there just in case anything doesn't work out quite correctly as well. So certainly when I'm doing that, then that's the most kind of challenging time, just to make sure that I get everything right. But then there's the consistent podcast that I produce maybe on a fortnightly basis for a couple of clients as well.
Now, one of my jobs as the host is to anticipate what my audience would like to hear and pick your brain on their behalf. And I've never actually spoken to anybody about virtual summits, so forgive me, but I would like to dig into that a little bit. Can you maybe, for anybody that's never been involved in a virtual summit, either as a contributor or as a consumer, just give us a brief synopsis of what is a virtual summit, and then I'd like to dig a little deeper after that.
Sure. I mean, a virtual summit could be a couple of different things. I guess the most common way of doing it is where you get people to sign up to watch live, and this is often a series of maybe a dozen or so different presentations in a particular topic or a particular industry sector, and you've got maybe 8 or 12 hours of live streamed presentations, and you've got a fairly large audience that interacts. And then often these virtual summits are free to attend the live stream, but then the content's taken down, or people don't have access to watch the replays unless they sign up to perhaps pay a small amount of money to watch the replays, then have access to maybe something else, maybe a product alongside the recordings after the virtual summit. So in essence, it's a big day of live streams behind a wall that people have to sign up to watch, top presentations, but in order to watch free, you have to be there live.
And for those who've never, the reason I think a lot of people on their digital marketing business journey think, okay, I need to be looking at virtual summits, is because they're held to be a brilliant list building tool. If you don't have much email marketing list, a live stream can often be seen, not a live stream, a virtual summit can often be seen as a silver bullet for that.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't agree with that. I think it depends generally on what partners you're producing the virtual summits with, who's taking part, who's willing to promote it, but it's an awful lot of work to put one on. You're talking about at least a couple of weeks of solid work to really put everything together, and then the day itself can be very intense as well. And you often can't make it very successful unless you've got a significant list yourself to start off with. So it's probably not the place to start. I think the obvious place to start is simply having a call to action in your website and a free PDF giveaway or a free small set of videos giveaway to start building your list. Something very specific. It's not the size of the list now. It's making it very specific to what you happen to be doing as a business. That's the starting point, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think as a starting point, you're absolutely right. But that next step for those people that have established a bit of an audience, I think a virtual summit can be a great opportunity.
It's an option.
But again, it's the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, it's an option. I wouldn't say it's the first thing to do. I would say certainly if you're looking at it from a content production journey, then starting an audio podcast is the best way to go to begin with, and to start building those relationships with people that could perhaps present at your virtual summit at some point in the future.
Right. That makes sense. So for those people that would be ripe for virtual summits, and they will probably know who they are, what might be the number one things to avoid, I guess? I think there's...
For producing a virtual summit?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, you need to make sure that obviously technically you're set up. So you've got a high quality computer that will handle multiple videos coming into it and being able to broadcast in fairly high definition and produce an event. You've got a high quality internet connection. You know how to use a decent microphone and look into a camera and present in an engaging manner and engage with people in the chat at the same time as well. And you've got everything structured. Ideally, you'll have a little teleprompter in front of you that will be something that you can read intros and outros from as well. So it's not going to be the first thing that you do. I mean, I always suggest kind of going through kind of 4 or 5 different steps, starting off with an audio podcast, moving on to mastering decent quality audio, and then after that moving on to pre-recorded video, then live streaming, so then embracing LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or wherever and actually looking at live chat and being able to engage with people on the live chat. And then the next step after that is virtual summits. Unless you come through those steps of, first of all, producing decent quality audio, secondly, being able to look into a camera and kind of talk directly to that, thirdly, engaging with a live audience and actually answer questions without losing your train of thought, then there's no point in moving on to a virtual summit.
I think the sum up there would be curb your enthusiasm and get good at each of the elements before you try and put them together.
Yes, yeah, because there's so many people doing it now. Is people expect a certain standard, they expect a certain quality. Whenever any business talks about their competitors now, I think they lose sight of the fact that actually, from a content marketing perspective, their competitors are not who they necessarily think they are, because they're target audience is engaging with all sorts of content, and it's who's producing the content that are the competitors of the eyeballs that they're trying to attract. So I'm talking about Netflix, the BBC, other big platforms there. Unless you can actually produce content that won't turn people off, i.e., ensure that the audio quality and video quality isn't horrendous compared with what they're used to consuming, then they're not going to continually consume your content, and you're not going to build the authority of your brand.
One of the things you spoke about before we started recording was the 6 steps to writing the book, and you mentioned the 4 steps to the virtual summit there. Are they related? And if not, we should probably speak about the process of writing the book, because what you spoke to me about before we were recording was really very insightful, and I would like to cover some of that, if that's okay.
Sure, yes. I mean, to begin with, just going into a little bit more detail, kind of starting an audio podcast, I think that's a wonderful way just to get your voice, just to start to master the art of being able to converse with whoever happens to be listening and find the way that you want to speak, that you're comfortable speaking. You're recording, you don't have to even put the audio out if necessary, but it'll take 20 plus episodes before you get comfortable with what kind of show that you want to produce, and this will relate to things like virtual summits or other live streams that you want to do in the future. But unless you get that audio right to begin with, then you're not forming the good base for what will be a good quality virtual summit in the future. So things like a simple microphone like an ATR 2100 or a Samsung QTU, those are wonderful microphones that only cost about £50 each. But as long as you use them correctly, if you speak about 3 inches away from them with a windscreen, then, and you have a boom arm as well, then for less than something like £80, then you have a decent quality recording kits that you can use to produce your first audio podcast. From there, stage 2 is start to produce your show more professionally. And so if you're doing things like in post-production, adding an intro, adding an outro, adding bumper noises, editing the show a lot, then try and do that as live so you don't have as much post-production work that you have to do. Think about perhaps upping your audio quality a little bit. I've got a microphone called the Electro Voice RE20 that I really like. I highly recommend that most people use a dynamic microphone instead of a condenser microphone. A dynamic microphone essentially means that you have to be quite close to it, but it also means that it doesn't record all the background noise in a room. So if you've got a noisy computer or an air conditioner unit, then it's less likely to pick that up. So a dynamic microphones are generally a good microphone for podcasters to get. Upping audio quality, I take my microphone into a voice channel strip that has a few different elements in there that just helps to enhance the audio quality. Things like ensuring that there's not too much mid-level in there. There's a little bit of compression. There's a tiny bit of de-essing in there. That's things that you shouldn't worry about to begin with to produce a decent quality audio podcast, but that's the next step. Get comfortable doing that before moving on to video, and then when you move on to video, that means that you don't even have to think about audio quality. It's second nature to be able to produce reasonable quality audio. You can start to look directly into the camera there as well, and be aware of how you're coming across. You can be aware of your background and your lighting and the quality of your camera. So get that right again before moving on to live streaming. And then with the live streaming, which is the 4th step there, you can focus on the audience. You can focus on the interaction. You can look at comments. And again, you don't have to think about too much about your audio. You don't have to think about too much about being able to also looking into the camera when you start, when you finish, occasionally when you reference people as well, because you should be much more comfortable doing that sort of thing. So I wasn't by intention going through those steps, but looking back on it, that's how I successfully published the book. Because the fifth step was the production of the virtual summits and getting all those people together on the events. I've hosted events with 130 or so marketers on there over 8 hours as a result of doing all those podcasts. And then, funnily enough, 8 hours of audio content is roughly 60,000 words, which is the average length of a book. Now, I'm not suggesting that you just take a transcript and publish it as a book. I ended up rewriting everything to make it more readable, but it's a good basis for a book.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really structured, logical process for producing quality, because it's very easy to rush these things and hack things out. But everybody's doing that. And there is enough rubbish out there.
Yeah.
I think what you've described there is a process for producing quality at every step. And when your business is you and your personal brand, that's essential. So I really like that. Thank you for sharing that.
That's all right. You're welcome. Yes, it's important to up the quality game, and I think interact natively on platforms as well. I think too many people are still thinking publish everywhere mentality and not interacting natively on different platforms and understanding what consumers on different platforms really prefer. And I think 2020 is the year of perhaps limiting the number of platforms you're on, but producing quality content that is highly appropriate for the platforms that you happen to be on, and engaging with the audiences on those platforms.
Yeah. So I would like to ask your opinion on something, because I'm a member of a few Facebook groups for podcasters, and I see the same question coming up again and again, which is, I'm starting a podcast and I want to do and I'm making bunny ears now, video podcast.
Okay.
A podcast is an audio format, but what you described there about bringing that foundational competency into a live stream environment after you've become comfortable with recorded video. What experience have you had of trying to bring your podcast into a video audience? And has it worked? Can you see a journey where that can work?
Yeah, it can work. I would say that a podcast is primarily an audio format, but of course, a podcast is simply a file that is included in an RSS feed. So that could perhaps be a video file. It could even be a PDF in theory, but by and large, it's an audio file. By and large, it's an MP3 file. I've tried producing an MP4 podcast, a video podcast as well, that people can subscribe to. Generally, that's not really worthwhile doing. Most people don't want to download massive video files onto their phone. They'll prefer just to live stream. Of course, people download movies on Netflix or BBC iPlayer, but generally, to subscribe to a podcast, people will prefer to be subscribing to the audio form. That doesn't mean that video can't be used in producing a podcast. So I've often live streamed as a way of producing the podcast. So I've got access to LinkedIn live streaming. So over the last 6 months or so, I've probably recorded at least 20 episodes live on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, I've seen an awful lot of video views from. What I mean by that is, I've got a decent number of connections on LinkedIn, but I don't pay to promote at all. But whenever I go live on LinkedIn, I'll maybe get about 50 people interacting and watching live, and within 24 hours I'll get about 2,000 views, and that's without paying for anything at all. And I think that's a really nice reach to have, or organically, before you do anything. So it can be a nice way of producing a podcast. The downside to producing a podcast while live streaming is you can be slightly distracted by the live audience or focus on the video if you're not careful. So I don't recommend to do that to begin with. If you're taking your first step into podcasting, obviously I'll always recommend producing audio first. But if you're moving towards video and moving towards live streaming, then I'd suggest go live, perhaps with your guest, and then for the first 5-10 minutes or so, welcome people, tell them what you're about to do. You're about to record a podcast episode, get a few ideas perhaps for content for the episode, write questions down, and then for the period that you're recording your podcast, perhaps even just minimize your LinkedIn video or whatever platform you're broadcasting on, and focus on the podcast, recorded the podcast, and then go back to the live stream after you're finished recording the podcast, and then perhaps interact with the audience a little bit more. That's a nice way to start with. Ideally, you'd probably move on to being aware of what people are saying during the discussion, but you've got to make sure that it doesn't detract from the quality, the audio quality that you're trying to produce.
That's really, really useful, interesting. And I have one nerd question that I may edit out afterwards, but I have to ask this. Whenever I've tried to use things like Zoom for recording a podcast interview, the audio quality just isn't there. So how would you advise maintaining the audio quality on the one hand and a live stream environment, which is inherently a low audio quality environment?
Are you talking about the audio quality of your guest, or you, or both?
I think when people are watching a live stream, they're quite comfortable with a compressed audio sound. But when people are listening to an audio podcast, they want a quite high quality audio sound.
I think that I mean, you can record your guest as a solo track from something like Zoom as well, or from any other live stream, and then you can record your own audio locally as well. I actually record my own audio locally on a Zoom H5 external digital audio recorder. So that goes kind of records a high quality WAV file, and I always for whatever podcast I'm producing, record my own audio on that. Sometimes I'll use an external service like Zencaster to record my guests' audio kind of locally, as well as doing the live stream. That way I'll probably have a better quality audio recording of their audio. I have found, however, that often it doesn't select the right microphone, and I end up just using my guest audio from YouTube or Zoom or whatever platform we're recording on.
Okay, that all makes sense. Then I guess everything you've described so far, there's an air of competency around everything you've discussed, and I'm really curious to know, personally, which part of your business do you struggle with most? It's not necessarily a fair question to drop on you.
No. I mean, what do you mean by struggle? Do you mean kind of not enjoy? Do you mean kind of struggle to drive revenue from, or kind of struggle in some other way?
I think where I'm coming from is, I should probably articulate this question better, but if you're not moving forwards, you're moving backwards. And in moving forwards, we have to learn new things, new skills, and learning new skills is painful and difficult. So I guess, where are you finding that you've got the most work to do right now?
I think my main struggle has always been ensuring that I just focused on a few things, because I'm fairly competent in quite a few areas, having been involved with digital marketing for decades. And that, can be a positive, but it can be a challenge. And I made the decision maybe 5 years ago, to try and focus more on podcasting and webinars as my core platforms. And now I'm focusing more on the brand marketing now, and my domain name davidbain.com. I've got loads of other domains. I've got loads of other little projects that I'm thinking of maybe doing in the future, but I think I'm thinking more thoughtfully about how to integrate them together. And if it's not a product or a service that will integrate with what I'm currently do, and something that I can perhaps drive my existing audience towards, then it's something that I need to seriously consider about whether or not I should be doing it.
that makes a lot of sense. It's very hard to push lots of balls uphill at the same time, and the temptation is there because there's so many things we can be doing. It's just sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So with marketing now and the book, people are listening. What action would you like them to take on that, I guess? Because where can they buy the book?
Well, probably the easiest place online to give people is davidbain.com. That'll forward at the moment to davidbain.com/marketing now, which is the landing page for the book itself, and there's links from there to Amazon in the UK and the USA to buy the book. It took me a long time to get that domain name, and I'm really happy that I finally got it. I had to actually go into an auction on GoDaddy to get it a couple of months ago. I've been keeping my eye on it for at least for the best part of 20 years probably. So I'll be focusing more on that domain and that website moving forward.
And this is Happy New Year. This is I've always been encouraged I should have a signature question at the end of the show, and this is it.
Okay.
So I guess in terms of your business now, what's one thing that you do now that you wish you'd started doing 5 years ago?
Wow. Okay. I listened to a couple of your podcast episodes.
This wasn't there
today, which wasn't there exactly. And I want to try and give the right piece of advice here. So what's one thing that I'm currently doing that's
that you wish you'd started 5 years ago?
Wish I'd started 5 years ago. I've done a lot of things. I think it's more about consistency rather than something that I haven't done. Let's see. I was podcasting 5 years ago. I was hosting these virtual live events 5 years ago. I think maybe focusing more on my personal brand and building one home for everything and understanding the value of traditional marketing as well as digital marketing, the value of branding and what consumers really think about you, and at every touch point that you have online, whether or not it's on your website or somewhere else, is it consistent? Do people get a true reflection of you and who you are, and are you building that one little additional notch of authority in each interaction that you're giving consumers? I think still nowadays my content online, perhaps because I've published it over the years, is very bitty and not necessarily sharing the same message or giving people the same experience. So I think start to do a better job of tying everything together and creating more of a single brand identity.
Given that I dropped this question on you from a significant height, you've given me a brilliant answer. Thank you for that.
It took me a little while though.
David, if people want to connect with you, how would you like them to do that?
Just go to davidbain.com. I also have David Bain as the handle on Twitter and David Bain on LinkedIn. So either of those platforms socially, or davidbain.com, the website.
And I'll put links to those and your book in the show notes. David, you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, Happy New Year. Thanks for being my first of 2020.
First of many. Well, thanks for having me on. Great to be on with you, Bob. Thanks again.
I got a lot from this chat with David, and I hope you did too. It's very tempting to try and do everything at once, to be everywhere all the time, but it makes much more sense to do a few things really well. Before I go, just a quick reminder to subscribe, and if you haven't already, to join our Facebook group. You can find a link in the show notes, or just hit amplifyme.fm/insiders. If you're a regular listener, then I would love for you to connect with me on social media. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter, where I'm @BobGentle, And if you do, then message me just so I can know and I can follow you back. If you enjoyed the show, then I would love for you to review it on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it's the very best way to help me reach more subscribers. My name's Bob Gentle. Thanks again to David for giving us his time this week, and to you for listening. And see you next week.